David's story begins in the humble pastures of Bethlehem, the youngest son of Jesse, a shepherd boy with little social status and no royal aspirations. He was a youth of great faith and courage, shaped by solitude and the responsibility of caring for his father's sheep. It was during these early years that David learned to trust in the Lord, defending his flock against predators like lions and bears with nothing but a sling and his faith in God. These acts of bravery, though unseen by men, were known to God and would prepare David for his future role as Israel's greatest king. The prophet Samuel was sent by God to anoint a new king after Saul had failed to follow God's commands. Guided by the Lord, Samuel arrived at the house of Jesse. Though David's older brothers appeared more kingly in appearance, God reminded Samuel that he looks not on the outward appearance, but at the heart. David, though overlooked by his family, was chosen by God. Samuel anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and from that day forward, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Soon after, David entered Saul's service, initially as a musician. His skill with the harp soothed Saul when he was tormented by an evil spirit. David's character and bravery led to greater recognition when he visited his brothers at the battlefield, where the Philistine giant Goliath defied the armies of Israel. With unwavering faith, David confronted Goliath with just a sling and 5 stones, declaring, "The battle is the Lord's." God guided David's hand, and the stone struck the giant's forehead, killing him instantly. David's victory over Goliath brought him fame and favor, though it also stirred jealousy in Saul's heart. As David continued to serve Saul, he became a skilled warrior and leader. He won many battles, and the people began to chant, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." Saul, threatened by David's popularity and God's favor upon him, grew increasingly hostile. David's life became one of constant danger as Saul sought to kill him. Despite being anointed as the future king, David did not seize the throne by force. He fled and lived as a fugitive, gathering a group of loyal followers and twice sparing Saul's life, proving his respect for God's anointed. During these years of exile, David showed remarkable restraint and trust in God's timing. He lived among the Philistines at times and even pretended to be insane to avoid danger. Yet, he never abandoned his faith. He composed many psalms during these trials, pouring out his heart to God. His leadership grew, and he began to act as a protector for the people, defeating raiding bands and defending the vulnerable. One notable victory was against the Amalekites, who raided Ziklag and took captives. David sought God's guidance and pursued them, defeating the Amalekites and recovering all that was taken, including his 2 wives and the families of his men. After Saul's death in battle against the Philistines, David mourned sincerely. He did not rejoice in the death of his enemy, but lamented the fall of the Lord's anointed. David was then anointed king of Judah in Hebron. However, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was made king over the other tribes of Israel. A civil war ensued between the house of David and the house of Saul, lasting several years. Eventually, Ishbosheth was assassinated, and the tribes of Israel came together to acknowledge David as king over all of Israel. He was 30 years old when he began to reign and ruled for 40 years. As king, David established Jerusalem as the political and spiritual capital by bringing the Ark of the Covenant into the city with great celebration. He united the tribes and expanded Israel's territory, defeating the Philistines, Moabites, Edomites, Ammonites, and Arameans. David was a military genius and a fearless commander. He led a successful campaign against the Philistines multiple times, including a notable victory at Baal Perazim, where he declared, "The Lord has broken through my enemies before me, like a bursting flood." He then pursued the Philistines further and struck them down from Geba to Gezer. David also conquered the stronghold of Zion, which became known as the City of David. He defeated the Jebusites who had mocked him, saying even the blind and the lame could repel his attack. But David's forces entered through the water shaft and captured the city. In battle against the Moabites, David measured them with a line, putting 2/3 to death and sparing 1/3 to serve him, thus subjugating the Moabites. When the king of Zobah marched to regain control of the Euphrates River, David struck him down and captured 1,000 chariots, 7,000 horsemen, and 20,000 foot soldiers. David hamstrung all but 100 of the chariot horses. The Arameans of Damascus came to aid Zobah, but were also defeated, and David established garrisons in their land, making them subject to tribute. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. He took shields of gold from Hadadezer's servants and brought them to Jerusalem. He also defeated Edom, placing garrisons throughout their land, and all the Edomites became subject to him. One of David's most celebrated victories was against the Ammonites and their allies. After the Ammonites humiliated David's envoys, David sent Joab and the army to confront them. The Ammonites hired Aramean mercenaries, forming a formidable alliance. Joab divided his forces, assigning part to Abishai and trusting in the Lord for the outcome. The strategy worked, and both enemies fled before Israel. Later, David personally led the army against Rabbah, the Ammonite capital, capturing it and taking the crown of their king. David showed kindness to Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, honoring the covenant he made with his dear friend. He governed with justice and righteousness, guided by God's law. Yet David's reign was not without failure. At the height of his power, David committed a grievous sin. He saw Bathsheba bathing and, consumed by desire, committed adultery with her. When she became pregnant, David tried to cover it up by bringing her husband Uriah home from battle. When Uriah refused to enjoy the comforts of home while his fellow soldiers fought, David arranged for him to be placed on the front lines where he would be killed. After Uriah's death, David took Bathsheba as his wife. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. God sent the prophet Nathan to confront David. Nathan told David a parable about a rich man who took a poor man's only lamb to prepare a meal for a guest. David, angered by the injustice in the story, declared that the rich man deserved to die. Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man." Nathan revealed David's sin and pronounced God's judgment. The sword would never depart from David's house. The child born to Bathsheba would die, and calamity would come from within his own family. David was struck with deep remorse and confessed, "I have sinned against the Lord." Nathan responded, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. But because by doing this you have shown utter contempt for the Lord, the son born to you will die." David repented deeply, expressing his sorrow and desire for restoration in Psalm 51, pleading, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." Though God forgave him, the consequences of his actions brought lasting pain. David's family suffered turmoil. His son Amnon violated his half-sister Tamar, leading to her brother Absalom's revenge. Absalom later rebelled against David, declaring himself king and forcing David to flee Jerusalem. Though brokenhearted, David would not fight his son, and when Absalom was killed in battle, David wept bitterly. Despite these tragedies, David remained faithful to God. Toward the end of his life, David prepared for the building of the temple, a task God said would be completed by his son Solomon. David gathered materials, gave Solomon detailed instructions, and charged him to remain faithful to the Lord. David's final words in Psalms reflect a man who trusted in God's mercy and justice. He acknowledged his failures, but also God's enduring faithfulness. David died at a good old age, full of days, riches, and honor. He was remembered as a man after God's own heart, not because he was perfect, but because he sought the Lord sincerely. His legacy endured through the line of kings that followed, and ultimately pointed to the Messiah, Jesus Christ, who is called the Son of David. If you enjoyed learning about the Bible, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about what story you want to see next.